So tell me a little bit about you and what you do at 5-Star.
Sure. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at 5-Star Call Centers. I work with clients from coast to coast on building customer experience processes that really, separate themselves from their competition. So, it's really what I've done for the last 30 years. I love identifying everywhere from the start of the process, selecting the right team members, putting processes into place to allow team members to really provide world-class customer service. And, over the years, it's just fun to see how people really come out of their shells. A lot of times people start, at the very entry level, and all of a sudden they see what an impact of having great customer service can do, and they start bringing their ideas in and really get engaged in the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're here talking about the USD Center for Professional Development. Tell me a little about how that kind of got started for you, how you heard about that, and how you got involved.
Sure. Well, I'm actually a USD guy. Graduated from USD, met my wife there. So for me, it's actually a double win. I've been doing workshops and coaching and consulting all across the country for years with companies to build their customer service plans. And as I kind of found out what was going on here and looking at the leadership aspect of it, it just looked like a perfect fit, because I think as companies grow and they build their organizations, everyone has a technology plan and a marketing plan and a finance plan, but there's so many companies that take customer service maybe for granted, or they don't make it a focus. And once they do, it's just world changing for them. It gives them a whole new focus, a whole new vision, a whole new aspect of their organization.
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously for us coming from the culture perspective, that's always a reflection of the culture is the customer service. Because oftentimes how employees are treated or how they treat customers. But the other piece of it is it just shows an attention to detail. It shows what happens when you're considerate about experience. Because oftentimes if you're not considerate about your customer's experience, you're not considerate about your internal customer's experience. And so that's always a reflection for me about culture. So talk a little bit about that piece of it, about how you guys backfill that. Because it's not just as simple as saying, smile, say thank you or whatever. Like, it's got to be really built in there.
Yep, absolutely. So, a lot of times I think it's just taken for granted, especially in the Midwest, because we are generally nice here. Mm-hmm. I think maybe even other parts of the country spend more time and effort being, really strategic with it. But around here, we just kind of assume everybody knows how to provide great customer service, but they don't. And maybe, what they learned at another job is, you want to wipe their brain clean from the end of it. So it really is a matter of, as an organization, defining what you want your customer service attitude to be. And it's so much fun to sit with customers and say, this is what we want our attitude to be. I was with one group and they're a sales organization, and the term that they go with is, we want to crush it, right? And once everyone gets in that mind frame and you're walking around, how's your day going? I'm crushing it. It's just even, and I've had a 60-year-old lady say to me, I'm crushing it today. I mean, how awesome is that? And so you define your attitude, and then you start looking at the deliberate part of your culture, and where can you make that look? So I break it into 3 points. So the attitude that you want. And once you've defined the attitude you want, it makes interviewing a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Because when people come in that don't have that attitude, it's an easy no. Right. And when people come in that have that attitude, it's an easy yes. Yeah. And the chances of being successful are so much better. So defining that attitude, and then connections, identifying how do you want to connect with your customer. Whether you're a restaurant or a hotel or a hospital, what are the connection points? Whether it's technology or whether it's the facility or whether it's the customer interaction face to face, over the phone, online. Yeah. And when you give people a definition of the attitude you want and ways to connect, they go nuts. They they go nuts. And I have people come to me all the time and they're like, I need my husband to go through this training, or I need my wife to go through this training, because what they're learning about attitude and connection, well, guess what? That's not only how they're treating their customers, goes back to culture again, like you said, is they're then that same attitude they're going to have with the customers, they're going to have with their coworkers, that same connection, the way that they're expected to connect, and then thank. And there's all kinds of studies that are done out there about, when you thank somebody, it connects you and them.
Right.
There's different synapses that take place in your brain. And what I like about it is when I say thank you, it means we're done here. Right? That this interaction is over. So if you're not okay with that, then you can say, well, wait, we're not done.
Yeah.
But it also, for me, I say, thank you. I appreciate it. I can now move my brain matter over to the next thing that I need to focus on. And once people understand attitude, connection, and thank, and they realize that that's how their interaction goes, their brains just get like clearer. Yeah. And I've even had people that have gone through my training and like they end an interaction and they stop like dead in their tracks and they come running back and they say thank you to whoever the customer was, because they realized they missed that piece of it and they were walking away and their brain wasn't able to focus on the next thing yet.
Right.
And once it becomes a habit, it becomes a habit over and over and over again. And then when customers come in, that's what they expect. And customers, or whether they call in or whether they go online, once they expect that, they go to another transaction that doesn't have it and they miss it.
Right.
And that is what's going to bring them back to your organization over and over and over again.
Right. What's interesting about that as well is great customer service is an opportunity to feed your employees as well. When you're going throughout the course of a day and you might be having 10, 20, 60 interactions with the person, it's easy for it to get mundane. It's easy for it to start to be a drain. But when you have great customer service and there's an energy there and that person is able to feed that energy back to you because they're pleased with what's happening, that gets you a boost to that next call or to that next interaction or whatever, and it allows it to feed you. And that's how you get through those day after day after day of doing, roughly the same job, is that each one has an opportunity to be unique because that person is feeding back into you and give you that kind of energy.
Absolutely. And again, I go back a little bit. One of the reasons why I love that this course is here is, again, I do this all throughout the country, but in the Midwest and specifically, in Sioux Falls and surrounding areas, we sometimes take it for granted. For the most part, we do provide pretty good service. I just had a partner here from the East Coast earlier this week, and they just kept saying, man, every time I go to a restaurant, every time the service is better. And I think you can so you've already got that leg up. Yeah. And you've already got people that want to provide it. So give them the tools and make it a cognizant part of their day. And it just catches on like wildfire. And when people come in to train, everyone has maybe a mindset of what training is going to be like. And if your training is focused around the customer experience, it gives that person a whole different insight into your organization because you understand the attitude, the connection, and the thank. And, I always say training is a journey, right? It's not a destination. It's not you start this day and by X day you're ready to do what. It's a journey and you need to learn throughout that journey. And when customer service becomes a centric part of your business and everything goes around it, your training becomes your day-to-day life. Yeah. So when those people come in and they're learning the attitude, the connection, and the thank, the first day they're interacted with a customer, it's easy. It's great. It really is a pain point to me when training does not mirror the job. People will come in, go through a couple weeks of training, do great, and then their first day on the job is totally different. Yes. And it's like, why? I mean, you kind of, back to the culture, unfortunately, you set that person up for failure or for stress. And not on purpose, but it does happen. So I tell people, try to make training as an onboarding, the entire onboarding journey, as much like their normal day-to-day as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's get into the class. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, we've been talking with a couple folks from the roster about how important this kind of thing is to be able to have this professional development. There's so many small and medium-sized businesses that don't have the type of infrastructure to internally educate their folks to the level that they want them to be at, to get them all of those skills and abilities that we know are now as valuable or more valuable than any other skill that you can really give somebody. And so when we talk about that class, number one, what are some things that people can expect from this class, and how might they be able to apply it?
Yeah, so I always start with a state of customer service, which I go to conferences all throughout the country, and customer service is everywhere from face-to-face interactions, it's interactions online, it's chat, it's social media, it's phone calls, and things like that. So I really like to go through and identify some best-in-class, services and things like that. And usually that's where people love to interact and talk about companies they like. Or companies they don't like. Sometimes the best way to look at it is what not to do.
Right.
So I really try to level set and look at, the state of customer service, where we're at as a society, and what things we can do. The golden rule doesn't apply anymore. It's the platinum rule. The golden rule is, treat those the way, you want to be treated. It's actually treat those the way they want to be treated. Treat those the way they want to be treated, because a millennial maybe doesn't want to be treated the same way I do, or a Z or a boomer or whatever the case might be. So we start with that definition, and then really it's a matter of looking at your own organization and identifying your own attitude, connection, and thank. And that's where it's really fun too, because people start coming up with all these ideas. I even learn things, right? That people are like, oh, I could do this and we could do that, or oh my goodness, and generally at the end of that, people are like, well, this is easy, right? Why didn't I think of this, right? And it's like, you're right. And then we actually put it into practice. The first way we put it into practice is we go through the different generations and we say, okay, you just built your customer service plan for your organization, your team, your whatever this applies to, the attitude, connection, and thank that you want. How are you going to do this for a Zer or a millennial or an Xer or a boomer or a traditionalist? Because it's probably going to be different, right? Yeah. If one of the ways you thank people is, through a social media post, well, you maybe missed part of the population, right? And if the way that you thank them is through a handshake or a hug, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? Now we're into a whole different world. So, but it allows them to test out what they just built in a very real world, and kind of get the wheels turning. And then we test it out again of building high performing teams. And high performing teams, it's kind of off your model actually, and it's SOAR. It's selection. What's your selection look like? What attitude are you looking for? Onboarding. What's your onboarding journey look like? As far as that goes. And then the acknowledgement or the goals. What are you going to set? From that end of it, and then you're going to react, right? Because things will change. Sometimes you will do a great job. How are you going to react to that? And sometimes you won't. And how are you going to react to that? So, and then it gives you a chance to take that customer service model that you built and put it through two different. So that way, when you go back to your organization to put it into play, you've already thought about some of the stumbling blocks and so on and so forth. And I've had people follow up with me within days that are like, I put this into place already and it paid dividends. And I've gone to organizations, a year later, and they're like, we put this into place, but then we added this, and then we added this, and someone had that idea, and whatever. And it just really becomes part of the culture from the end of it. And I go back to a lot of the times, people that are coming into your organization as a new team member, or maybe as a senior leader, they have their own expectations or definitions of customer service, and you need to make sure you have very clearly defined what yours are, or they're going to go back to whatever their norm is. And maybe that norm's good enough. Chances are it's probably not.
Are you willing to bet your business on it?
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. So why not be deliberate with it and make it front and center and make it something that people can really sink their teeth into, and it can become part of their daily lives.
Well, as we say, culture will emerge whether intended or not. But if it's not one you invest in, it'll be one that you pay for. It's going to happen regardless. So there's an experience happening. It's just whether or not it's the experience you intended to happen, and is it going to bring about the results that you intend for it to happen, or is it just going to be somebody off of a bad day that happens to run into this customer at the bad time, and then you get the situation that now you're spending weeks dealing with this disgruntled customer, and that's if we're just talking about B2C, just one standard customer versus you potentially losing a client, an account, those type of things that can have a huge effect on what your business is. So, which is special that somebody could come in and they can get this class and they can learn these kind of things and get some real practical things that they can start to put into play pretty much immediately. If you had to sum it up into one or two things that you think somebody would really really grab onto, really gravitate to, that kind of can't miss component of it, what do you think that might be?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing is define the attitude you want. So many businesses don't do that, and it makes it hard for everybody, right? Yeah. And once you've defined the attitude that you want to portray and the service you want to portray, and you've put that into place, it makes it very easy to identify stars and not. You know, from that end of it, because, those that quickly gravitate to it, no problem. But if you don't define that and you don't give specific benchmarks, people can survive for months doing not good.
Right.
And that's not good for anybody, right? I'm guessing the team member's not going home in a great mood.
Right.
Customers, aren't coming back in a great mood. So the more clearly you define that and put that in place for your organization, two things, they're called always and nevers, right?
Yeah.
You can't go through every single situation, but you can say this always happens. On every single customer interaction, this happens. And this never happens.
Right.
Okay, those are the two bookends, right?
Right.
And and then you kind of get some gray area, from the end of it. And then once in a while, something will happen that you never even had managed. You're like, yeah, that has to go into the never pile. Yeah, from the end of it. But so I think the two biggest things are define your attitude you want and create your organization's always and nevers.
Yeah.
And when you get a senior group of people around the table and you say write down your always and nevers. Usually it takes a little contemplation, but normally it's the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of them are the same, hopefully.
Right.
And then there's 20% that are, oh my goodness, I never thought of that, well, of course, that'll never happen. They're like, well, it actually did. And that's why it's on my never list, or whatever. So
that's good, man.
That's
awesome.
Solid. So your course is March 24th. So coming up quickly, these courses at the USD Center for Professional Development kick off relatively soon. So we got a few weeks, and then we're going to be live, which is really exciting. It's kind of a cool resource. Like we said, there's a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses who don't have the OD teams, don't have the L&D teams to actually go get this. But I think this is really interesting because it does play so much into culture, into just customer experience. I think it's interesting too. Like you're doing customer service and experience when you're not in the office. Everybody's a critic. Everybody's got the ability to review your business, communicate with your business on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. So that really has to be intentional, which really ties into a lot of stuff that we talk about at Think 3D. So awesome. Anything else that you want to plug? This is the time.
One thing that you actually said that you talked about B2B versus, B2C, and it kind of closes the loop on what you said is, 20 years ago, if you gave somebody, bad experience, everyone used to say, oh, bad experience, you tell 10 people, good experience, you tell one. Okay. Now with social media,
millions,
right? Literally, a bad experience, you tell, millions of people. Yep. And I will also say with a good experience, you're telling just as many people, right? Yeah. And if you go out and do it, so it is magnified. Yeah. Customer experience is absolutely magnified. And the other thing is, in today's world, it is really the only way to differentiate your company long term. Right. I mean, you look at technology changes, a new phone comes out, whatever the good, in 6 months, somebody else will have, whatever. But if you build a culture and an organization of great customer experience, and like you said, it flows down into the entire culture, good luck replicating it. I say that all the time. Not that you can't, but it's going to take work. Yep. And customers are so savvy these days. Yeah. They know. They can walk in. The customers can walk in, and within 5 seconds, they know if you're dedicated to serving and to experience or not. Yeah. Maybe quicker than they might pull into the parking lot and see something and realize that that's the case. But we as humans have become so just precise at gathering and information that I'm telling you, and that's the other thing I love is after these courses, when I follow up with people, they're like, yeah, I get it. Now I walk into a store and I know within 5 seconds what my service is going to be like.
My wife hates going with me some places because just the way my brain works, It is just analyzing the entire experience in detail. And
Yep.
so like it's just like, well, now why would you? And so she's like, listen, you're not on the clock. Just I can't help it. But you make such a great point, which is people can always buy what you can buy. They can't necessarily build what you can build.
Yep.
And that's why you have to build these things for real.
Yeah.
And you go back to the class. I mean, that's just one of the great things about South Dakota is that this is accessible to everybody.
Right.
That someone can go to, there's 14 classes listed or 12 classes listed depending on the number of days, and you can go to these and for a minimal investment in time and energy and money, really become an expert in an area and separate yourself and your business in a way that not a lot of places is this an option. It really isn't an option in a lot of places.
Yep. This is cool. It's a great arbitrage of knowledge. I love that. So yeah, we got a lot of cool things coming up. Go make sure you check out these at the USD Center for Professional Development website and our podcast page. We're going to have links in all the descriptions for that. Thanks for coming by, man.
Yeah, great to
Appreciate
be
it.
here.
Good
Appreciate it.
conversation.
Good stuff.
We appreciate you guys. If you're listening in, let us know what you think. Drop us a line. Hit us with a comment. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys soon.
We're out. Easy peasy.
Piece of cake.